Welcome to You Heard It From Us, the podcast where adventure meets advice. I'm DNDWife, your artistic storyteller and dedicated miniature painter.
And I'm Dungeon Master Eguile, your seasoned storyteller with a flair for epic tales and a passion for bringing our worlds to life. Together, we are a couple of nerds.
Whether you're navigating the depths of the dungeon or the dynamics of your gaming table, we're here to explore the vibrant world of tabletop role-playing games with you.
Each episode, we dive into topics that every gamer can relate to, like, is there really such thing as too many dice?
Or how to keep the peace when your co-adventurer is also your co-pilot in life.
We share our own trials, triumphs, and tales from the enchanting world of Extraeus and beyond, all while connecting with you, our amazing TTRPG community.
From community polls to social media shoutouts, we want you to be part of our adventure. So grab your favorite set of dice
and join us as we embark on a quest to make your tabletop gaming experience more fun and meaningful.
This is You Heard It From Us,
where every episode is an adventure.
Welcome to You Heard It From Us, the podcast where we dive deep into the tabletop RPG world, sharing our experiences, advice, and everything in between. I'm your host, DNDWife, an avid player, artist, and storyteller here to share my love for all things D&D.
And I'm DM Eguile, your resident dungeon master and gaming enthusiast. Today's episode is all about the gear you bring to the table as a player. From your trusty pen and paper to those high-tech tools, we'll explore what helps make your game sessions smooth and memorable.
We asked you, our amazing community, what tools you use for your games, and now we're going to break down your answers, share our personal setups, and give tips for building your own collection.
So stick around as we reveal the results of our poll and discuss everything from dice trays to digital tools that'll level up your gameplay. Let's jump right in.
So first, obviously, we want to talk about how we started, where we're at right now. What's our setup look like, you know?
I mean, I think obviously, like in the context of this, though, this is more of, I think, a you-centric thing, because obviously we posed this question to specifically players.
Yeah.
So I think it's only fair,
as the DM.
right? So I think it's only fair that you, as the resident player here on the podcast, to kind of give them an explanation as to what you went through and how you gained your now mass hoard of everything.
It's been a fun ride, I will say. When we first started, it was just like that Minds of Pandelver set that we've talked about. It was the first start and probably the start for a lot of people out there. So that was our first dice set too. First a lot of things, first DM screen, things like that, and then once we got the taste and really started wanting to play and setting up games for like regular play, it became more important to have a little bit of a setup. And we went through this whole like phase where we were making everything we could. So like we were going to Hobby Lobby and picking up stuff so that we could make dice trays and dice boxes and miniature little boxes to hold all your stuff in. So it was super fun. It was a great time because it was all sorts of arts and craftsy. And that's where I've made this really pretty dice tray that I still have, that I still use today.
Oh yeah.
It comes in and out of different campaigns depending on like what the color theme is. So
yeah, and I think obviously it plays a lot into like space too, right? Like so for you, you've always we've always had relatively large tables, so yeah. You've had kind of that ability to expand and have more things at the table because of that. I mean, but for you, like, did you find yourself evolving because you wanted new stuff, or was it actually making your like gaming experience better?
A little bit. I'd like to say it's a little bit of both because, with D&D, there's just like the basic tools needed, right? A pen and paper, and some dice, and that's it. You really just need the one set of dice. You can keep rolling the same die to get all of your, whatever you need. Yeah. It's a lot of math, but you can do it. It just becomes more fun, I think, and a little bit more immersive to get your tools to be a little more custom, a little more tailored towards you. So there's nothing wrong with just keeping the basic tools. I know there's a lot of people out there who aren't into like building a massive collection of D&D tools, but I absolutely loved it and embraced it, especially the dice. I just fell in love with them, and I think it really resonated with me, I guess, when Laura Bailey was talking about her hoard of dice
being a dice goblin,
and she was telling Travis, like, babe, they have barrels. They have barrels in the house. And that's kind of what I wanted after that. I just want a lot of dice. They're so pretty. And I want all sorts of dice, metal dice, gemstone dice, even the plastic dice, all the cool resin dice. So that was the start of that little obsession.
I mean, how much have you seen yourself change, like, your materials or what you need for, like, you know, you've been in three, you're currently in the third campaign, but you had 3 different kind of characters that had major impacts to you. How much have you seen kind of it change based on the player itself, like your character, excuse me?
Oh, they're vastly different. Like in the first campaign, Allure was very, you know, she was a bard, so it was very outgoing. It was very flamboyant, so she had a lot of different colors everywhere. Purple dice tray, and it wasn't just purple; it was like metallic. And I had like certain dice that, you know, that were fitting in the theme as well. But as I transitioned into the second campaign for Brenna, she was a completely different character. She wasn't you know, an outgoing extroverted bard. She was a tough introverted sort of outdoor survivalist who didn't really have a lot. It was very minimalist. So I have a dice tray for Brenna that's really beautiful. It's like a leather, it's brown leather, it's gorgeous, but it's very minimalistic because that's what, you know, that's what she is. She doesn't have a lot. And I have a dice set for Brenna as well because she's a paladin. So it's like a white and gold dice set that you got me as a gift. So that's also cherished and loved.
I mean, like, you know, especially on like a dungeon master side, there's like the kind of basic, I think, set for all players that I think obviously with
the first set,
right? Obviously with you being the wife to the dungeon master, you're kind of a part of this. And there's been many times where we tend to give that standard where it's like a dice tray, a set of dice. And that's kind of really the starter package for most players.
A little
and
set
then,
of tools.
You know, whether it's pen and paper or a cell phone or a tablet, that's kind of based on the player. But when it comes to like as a dungeon master, what I want to see kind of my players be equipped with, it's kind of that like that starter package that you know that you're in it. Like you're in the cult. And I think the best example I would have is of Thomas. At our table, right? And so, you know, he was a relatively new player. And for a while, you know, he was using the stuff that we'd give him, the hand-me-down dice that we always kind of laugh that everyone kind of gives to new players. But then he went out and bought a whole bunch of Wormwood stuff.
And
so to me, like that, and even though the other players knew, it's like, oh, like he's in it. Like
he got the bug.
He's dedicated. Like he needed to go out and get something like that because he's so in it now.
He's invested.
And I feel like that's what kind of shows with players and how they you know, kind of show their interest or how dedicated they are to the table. Not judging everybody, mind you. But it's just more of it, you know, a DM will never kind of shy off to seeing their players kind of investing in themselves, which in turn invests in the table.
And he didn't just go out and get the Wormwood stuff. He went out and got a bunch of themed dice too.
Well, that was another player that got him for that one.
Oh, that's true. That's
cool.
true. That's
yeah,
true.
that was cool. And that played into something much bigger. And we'll have to definitely get more. I imagine eventually we'll have some players up to show some of their special dice that you might have in a comic cave or something.
But the gifting is a big part of it. You know, that's part of how you build your collection too. It's not just the things you buy, it's the things you receive from fellow players, your DM just at the table.
Well, here's a special kind of situation for you. Also the things you've won.
Oh yeah, way back in the early days of DNDWife on Twitter, or well, what it used to be called. Now it's X, of course. But way back in the day, I entered like this random contest for this giant like Kraken die. For those of you, it's a company.
They make cool dice.
They make really cool dice, but this one was ginormous. It was a resin die, and it looks sort of like coral in look, with like swirls of a sort of reddy orange.
Does it glow in the dark?
It does. Yeah. It does. It's amazing.
Because you gotta have a dice that glows in the dark.
So you know, I only bring that out in like really big battles. It's not a super functional die because it's huge.
It'll make a dent in the table.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's resin, so it's not that heavy, but I do roll it in a dice tray.
Yeah, I think also, like, you know, sometimes there has to be like a little bit of like a stopping to player growth when it comes to their stuff. Like as a dungeon dungeon master, you want your players to have like
you can have too much.
Some of these like dice towers, these rollers, these trays, dice jail, all these. It gets to a point where like your table is so cluttered with so many like tchotchkes.
Yeah, it can be too much sometimes.
Right, and so it's like there's kind of a limit where you have to kind of have form and function. Like you have your little like your decorated piece or whatnot, but really if your table's flooded with so much crap,
that's tough.
You're going to be having like a backpack full of stuff. So every time you got to show up a half hour early just to set up your station. Like that's when it's like, even as a DM, I just be like, all right, we got to limit.
Right. Or at that point, just bring your own table.
I've heard of like DMs being like, okay, you can only bring like one extra book, for like material. But this is like, okay, you can only bring like a medium-sized dice tower and a medium-sized dice tray. And that's it.
Yeah. And if it's a dice jail, like it should, be like attached or something. Like shouldn't be its own thing.
Right. And so it's, it really is, it's kind of like, with everything, just like, we laugh because it's like the same thing of like moving out.
Yeah.
Right. When you go get your first apartment, you own nothing. You get the bare minimums for survival. You get like an inflatable couch. Everything is plastic and kind of cheap looking.
I think we went yard sailing for a lot of our first furniture.
Maybe somebody loans you or gives you some furniture. But it's so the same with D&D, right? Like you just have to go with it. Don't ever rush into it. I mean, I think the funniest story for me is growing up a long time ago, in a galaxy far away. With like card games and stuff like that. And this is going to be funny because it was the DBZ card game, right? And we were all playing it.
They had a card game.
Yeah, it's gone through a few different reworks, but it was garbage when I played it. But we had a friend of ours who really wanted to get into it, worked night and day, got his first paycheck, went and bought a whole box of cards.
Oh my.
We all quit the next day because we were just done with it. No. And so for that, it's kind of that same advice I give my players where it's like, hey, everybody loves D&D. Yeah. Everybody loves D&D. But there are a lot of people that are going to say, if you love D&D, you must own XYZ. This is the way you have to play. No, you said it yourself. One stack of dice and maybe a piece of cardboard if you're worried about how your dice land.
Yeah.
That's really it. That's all you need. Pen and paper, sheet of paper. I mean, a piece of toilet paper and a color crown. You can make it happen. It won't be easy, but you can make it happen.
Right? You'll figure it out.
And so that's kind of that thing. And for DMs, though, it is kind of like, you want to have them have expression, but you also want to limit that expression. And I think the biggest takeaway for me as the dungeon master is like, with these hard metal dice.
Those are tough.
And it is, if as a player, as me as a DM asking all you players out there, if you get those fancy stone or metal dice, be nice to your DM. Get a tray for them. It'll save the dice and save their tabletop. As those dice tend to start taking chunks over time.
Oh my, they have taken so much out of our table.
We discovered it at our table. As we looked at like the sheen, you could see just hundreds of little divots in the wax of the table.
Everywhere.
From us just rolling our metal dices when we got them. So now it's kind of like, hey, make sure you put them in a tray, save the table. But it is that fun path because D&D isn't a marathon, or it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
Everyone always says, oh, I'm in this campaign that went on for years. It's never, oh, we played one day and then we never played again.
Right.
So it is that kind of, it's a journey.
At least the good campaigns you want to stick with.
Because, the easiest way to look at is with you is like when you see all your supplies, all your gear, doesn't that just take you down like that memory lane of how you got to that point?
And it kind of also puts me in the right like mood for a session. So if I walk up and all my stuff is there and it's all themed to my character, it's so much easier to slip into that persona, to slip into the role play aspect of D&D and not feel awkward about it because all my stuff is there and that's me. So it's just me playing my character, being me.
It's the second part, right? Just like you dress your character up, you want to dress up your space too. And it's another representation of you as a player.
At least in my opinion. It helps serve as a reminder, an immersion sort of tool. I just like it.
Right. Well, obviously, this was a player-specific poll, so why don't you take it on over to see what our community had and what you think that means.
So, the question for today, or for this episode, was players. What gear do you bring to the table? And we had 3 options. The first was, just pen and paper. We don't want to get too crazy. Second was tech. So that includes tablets, laptops, phones, anything that requires a battery. And then, of course, our third option was all custom equipment. Everything is just personalized to you. Yeah. And, of course, that was our resounding winner.
Well, the big one with this one, though, we also open it up for multiple choice.
That's true.
In terms of, because a lot of players, I think, have kind of a mixture, a grab bag, right?
Yeah.
So, the reason why we wanted to open it up this way is, for example, like our table has kind of moved away from electronics in terms of cell phones.
Yeah.
But tablets are okay.
Yeah.
And just because cell phones allow for, text messages and all that kind of stuff.
And we know tablets do too, but it's just a little different.
But the main part is we still require the pen and paper. That's the baseline.
Yep.
So if you don't have pen and paper, you can't have tablet.
No.
And that way we can kind of keep it in control. So we wanted to open it up to our players if they do have those similar kind of rules set.
Yeah, we wanted to see if they included maybe a little bit of both, some hybrid tools. It just depends. But, it really was kind of a resounding win for custom. We did have, it was our lowest voting tier for the technology. It looks like technology is not super popular in D&D.
Right. And I think it's because it's like the anti-TikTok, right? Like, or TikTok brain, as I've heard say a lot out there. This like, we want to get lost for hours. No one wants 6 seconds of D&D.
The doom scroll is real.
No, right? Yeah. So it's like we want to get away with it. So I think a lot of players, which always makes me happy, are willing to put away their phones, like turn them off, unplug them, put them away, and that way they can actually just experience it. Because I've seen it where some of my players, they're in the game, they're there, but by opening their phone, they see the notification. They can't help
they have
themselves.
To open it.
They got to see what that notification. Oh, is it a TikTok alert? Is it a text message, email? And boom, the real world has come back.
Yeah.
You're out
and
of
now
it.
you're scrolling.
You're out of the place. You're back at home. And so that's, I think, a really cool thing that people are really kind of coming together.
Yeah.
And so. And for me, I really like the traditional pen and paper, right? It's the most simplest, it's the easiest, but it's also the most to not mess up.
Yeah.
And my biggest thing, and we learned this really on campaign 3, and I really love it with you too, is by doing pen and paper, I feel like you learn more about how to make a character in D&D.
And how to run one too.
Right, because don't get me wrong, love D&D Beyond. It helped us in the beginning.
It's so easy.
Or any of those other D&D character builders.
Yeah. If you need help, it's super good.
But to actually know exactly how those numbers came together, doing the math and knowing okay, my spellcaster is 8 plus proficiency plus spellcasting modifier.
Understanding why you get those numbers.
So now I've seen you guys, like some of my players, they just need to know the baseline number. They're like, oh, okay, well my spellcasting modifier is 4. Okay, I already know my number.
Yep, I don't
need to dig through and look it up. I already know the math, and since I know the math, I don't need the information.
Exactly.
And we actually are faster now with pen and paper than we ever were with computer or
the phones.
Or phones.
You know why? It's because of the start and stop of the phone, right?
Yeah.
You look up your stat, you open your phone, you take the time to look up your stat, and then what do? You turn off your phone, you set it down, and you go back to gameplay. But that requires then anytime you have to do a roll, you have to take out your phone again, unlock it, redo
that
everything.
Was a thing too.
It was tough.
But then I also get the tech side, right? Because to me, I'm a tech junkie. I love technology.
Yep.
I mean, excuse me. If you've seen any of the pictures of my table, there's tons of technology everywhere.
Oh yeah.
But I think a lot of people are cell phone and tablet focused are because of location and space.
Yeah. It's
if
just
you're
a little easier.
especially where I see, and it always blows my mind when we read stories about people who play D&D like on their couch around like their coffee table, and they're like sitting on the floor, and I'm just like, how do you spend 9 hours sitting on the floor,
right?
How do you take notes that way? I can see with that where there's not a big setup. So then if you can just have your phone, so it's like, oh, I need to check my stats, cool. And you don't have the space for it, right? And so that really gives you a little clean, efficient game space. But then we have people like you who like the big custom side of thing. And I think you were saying hardest was that's where you get to be the most unique at the table.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to really show, who you are, what you're sort of presenting as your character to the table, and it sort of sets you apart too from the other players.
Yeah, and we've spoken on this before about, wearing like costumes, and like a lot of our players wear special hats.
Yeah,
and stuff. And
we don't go full out, but we do have little props.
But when you have the little things and you combine that also with your dice being all of a certain color, or your things were, you use guns, and so you have bullets for dice, and that's always really cool. So it fits the motif and the theme, so that really kind of brings it all together, and it really kind of helps even more help people RP.
Yeah, it really does. It's
I
super
always feel
immersive.
like when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, it's one of the things that people are always wishing to work more on.
Oh yeah, because for Luna, my current character, I have I have a custom dice bag that's all in black. I have and purple on the inside. It's great. I love Etsy. You can find the best bags there. Yeah. I also have all of like my purple dice that I use, purple and black dice. That I'm using as well, that all gets, put aside in that bag. It's all themed. I have a journal that's specific to her, a binder that's specific to her. So it's all, it's just, it helps tie everything together, I think.
Yeah. And I also think, and from our community discussions and talking with our own players, is what we also saw too, was it also depends, because some players build a lot of their equipment and their looks off of that current player.
Yeah.
But then we have other players like Eric, who always kind of has more of this like necromancer theme for kind of everything. His dice are always kind of these bone dice and all these kind of like cool things like that, right? And so it happened to be finally that he's playing a character who's kind of undead and has all these kind of things to him, so it fits more. But that's always been his style.
Always. It's just his aesthetic as a player.
And so that's his style, because his older characters were all necromancers. He used to run a necromancer type campaign. So his style represents him specifically as Eric, where you have like where all of your styles are more based on the character you're currently playing, like you were talking about Luna, Alira, and Brenna.
Yep. Yeah, all of them had their own specific, unique little tools just for them. And I can't really use them interchangeably because they're all color themed to that specific person. So I would fall into a different character, and I tend to do accents for my character. So if I start doing like Brenna's accent or Alira's accent while I'm trying to be Luna, it's weird.
It kind of helps you keep in track of what character you are too, by the color scheme and the dice and all that kind of cool stuff.
Yeah.
But for me too, I also love, and this could play into a lot of our community, is accessibility as well, right? So a lot of times, you like pen and paper, but perhaps you can't really use pen and paper.
It can be tough.
So you're going to mix in a little technology. Or if you're like me sometimes, where like you get that like glare eye from like looking at screens. So sometimes the pen and paper is a better option.
More helpful, yeah.
But kind of like we always say, we always preface this, there is no right or wrong answer.
Not at all.
Always when it comes to D&D. There is no right or wrong answer.
Because we're all unique players, so we all have our own tastes, our own needs as well at the table. Some of us don't need as many tools, but some of us do.
Yeah, and so like for us, obviously I spoil you. Because I spoil all my players. I love to give you guys as much space. I mean, I redesigned my entire table to give you guys more space.
Yep, you did.
But I think when it comes down, I think we've talked a lot about this, is when it comes down to the essentials.
Yeah.
I think a dice tray is kind of an essential.
Yeah, especially for some of the crazier die.
In our early days, the running amok of dice is some of the most annoying things. If you have an apartment, if you have kids, if you have animals, you don't need D4 caltrops falling into your carpet.
Yeah.
And a dice tray is really simple. And like you had said, we just went to Hobby Lobby, got some spray on, put some felt down, painted them, and called it a day.
Yep, sealed them up. That's
all it really needs to be. So that's really the kind of my first kind of like big takeaway is just get yourself a good dice tray.
Yeah.
Or make yourself a good dice tray.
Right, because it was super cheap. I think we bought the actual dice tray that we use for like $5 at Hobby Lobby. The felt was like maybe another $1 or $2, and then the glue. Yeah, and the paint, and that's it.
Not only that, but it's a great thing. And DMs, there's tons of resources out there for campaign too. I got all you guys dice trays.
You did,
but I got you guys all the folding, like low ones. so that they could fit in your book bags, your binders, because there's kind of a dice tray for every occasion. I mean, there are like the dice tray, dice roller combos that fit inside each other. But really, it kind of all starts first with the dice tray to me. And I mean, I'm not a player, but I'm a DM and I still love my dice tray.
They're important. Not only do they protect your dice and your table, but they also, like I said, they represent your character. They provide they also prevent your dice from just rolling everywhere, rolling off the table, like you said, providing little sort of traps for people to step on.
Yeah. And it's cool too, because I also like, when we have the wooden ones, there's that knock, that audible knock when the dice are rolling in the tray. And I think as a player, again, I'm all about the sights, the smells, the feelings when it comes to D&D. And so when you're hearing the dice kind of rolling and you're hoping for a nat 20, I just love that feeling it's going to be. But also, like I was saying before, respect the property of your DM. If you do have those metal dice, get a good dice tray. Because they do help prevent damage. You never, as a player, want to leave a lasting impression into their table. Absolutely. You want it to be in their hearts, not the tabletop.
And if not for your DM, then for your own dice, because if you have gemstone dice, they can chip really easily.
That would suck.
Gemstone dice can be a little fragile if you're not careful. So a dice tray is really necessary for some of these. And even metal dice can have imperfections that might chip away and cause issues.
Yeah, and I think, and this is a weird one for me, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, but a laminator. It's actually really good for a player tool outside the table.
There's some pretty cost-effective ones out there. So
I mean, you can get the pre-made sheets. You can get an actual laminator, but laminating things like your player sheets,
a cheat sheet for yourself,
your spell sheets.
Oh yeah.
I've found that just giving those things for you guys to be able to like mark off with a wet erase marker, so you can be like, oh, I'm a druid. Well, here's your spell list. Circle the spells you have, and until you erase it, that's what you know you have.
Yep.
And that stuff is so nice, because obviously pen and paper is my preferred. But people like writing in pen. And pen is great, but it doesn't erase. And you don't want a player sheet that's just scratched with erasures and all this.
It looks like a redacted piece of
And I know you're the
document.
artist. I don't know if you can find and recommend, but I really haven't ever run into an erasable pen that was really good, that didn't cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah, they're tough out there. I would say it's a lot of trial and error.
I always found that you try to erase, and eventually you're just going to rip the paper trying to erase it.
I think we found a few that were like okay and a little passable, but at the end of the day, you really just, a laminator will save so much more time and effort.
Yeah, and then obviously keeps it safe for nothing worse than having like a repeatedly folded character sheet that you can't really read.
So many creases.
It makes them really easy, and and it's really just kind of, to me, the biggest important thing of whatever you have as a player. It's supposed to help you play easier. Right? A dice tray so your dice don't go everywhere. Dice that are cool so that you feel more empowered when you're rolling
more connected
dice.
to your character.
So all these things should help you. As much as I love glitz and glam, we're here to do D&D.
Oh, right. One thing I would recommend that I have seen at the table is a bullet journal for keeping track of your notes, because you don't just need lines to take the notes, right? You can draw maps, you can do little diagrams, you can write little separate notes, separate from your main notes, things like that. And so you can compartmentalize a lot in a bullet journal, and that can also serve to keep track of stats and things like that in the game as well. So that's something I would recommend.
And then too is if you are a tech person, which is awesome, techies unite. But be mindful of your charging situation.
It's tough,
obviously, if you're using the tech, it's got batteries. I really would recommend investing in a portable battery. They're great because they can sit on the table. They don't make extra cords. We've had a few near trip misses just because someone's trying to keep their tablet charged. But that cord has to go somewhere. And so if you are going to use your cell phone or anything, having like a inductive charger that you can have to a battery pack, you're going to be able to not have to worry about kind of causing any kind of problems or a tripping hazard on accident. So it's about each of the styles having a little bit of preparedness for each one. But I think really the easiest, or the first tip, and I think you should probably start on this, is just how to start that collection.
Oh, that's a tough one, right? How do you start? Well, the first one is start playing D&D.
Yeah, first, right?
After that, it's really just, find what you like, what resonates with you. And this is where my window shopping obsession in Etsy comes in really handy, because I will spend days, and I mean like weeks, poring over all of the different products on Etsy to search for the perfect one that resonates with me so much that I'm like, I have to buy that.
And I think too, and especially with Etsy, and you know, thank God for it. But I think really also what's a really cool aspect is theming has gone out like crazy now,
so
right?
Cool now.
You know, you can go to places like Your Wizard Dice, and if you just pick a color scheme or a class theme, all these dice specifically for this, or a dice tray, or a 3D printed dragon dice roller, you know, because you're a dragonborn, and all and so it allows you to really pick. I mean, I think the one that I loved, we never really gotten on them, are this company that makes element specific dice.
Yeah,
remember I showed you that?
That was really cool.
And so if you're like, okay, I'm a wizard that uses only lightning. Well, these are these cool where they're just lightning colors. Yep. So whenever you roll your lightning damage, they can be delineated and visually seen and have that cool effect, right?
That's awesome.
So, you know, for like, I see a lot of times, you know, you roll different colors. How cool would it be? You're rolling kind of a metal dice for your sword, and then 2 dice that look like they're on fire for the flame tongue sword that you have.
That's cool.
The dice alone are creating almost like a sense of realism to your combat.
Like showing what the damage looks like. That's pretty cool.
And it's so easy to find inexpensive things like that.
And you know, you don't have to go for the most expensive things out there. You don't have to buy, you know, Wormwood gaming things, even though, of course, that is the holy grail of things that we would love to get. But you don't have to. And I think that's the biggest beauty of D&D is you don't feel like you have to get all the best, most like state of the art things. You just have to get what works for you.
Yeah, and like I always think it's cool too, like all the new like dice holders that look like fantasy weapons.
Oh, I think they're so cool.
You know, I think the coolest one I've seen, and I've been talking to Thomas about it, is the little blunderbuss.
Yeah, a little revolver
shoots dice out for like his sneak attacks. I just think that's so cool because it's the little things that just create that nice little theme that I think everyone will love.
Right. And how much more fun would it be to do that instead of just like basic rolling?
Right. And you really hit it on the head of like, you got to shop though. Etsy is notorious of you find one you like, you buy it. The next day you will find another shop that sells it for like $20 cheaper. Yep. It happens every time.
So I make sure to spend quite a bit of time on there. It's just a necessary thing. Also, stick with 5-star sellers and above. Yeah. If they have really any sort of issues, you do sort of roll the dice, so to speak, with what you're going to get. So I would recommend do your research, look at the reviews, see what people have to say about the products before you purchase them.
Yeah, and obviously all these sites, Amazon, Etsy, you can wish list this stuff. Pick your stuff out, see what you can get. Sometimes sales happen and you can pick up stuff for cheaper. But really just that's the first thing. Get on a window shop, make your wish list, and then over time, you'll get it. And like you kind of brought up, a lot of it is also gifts. Yeah. Whether it's I as a DM, I like to give gifts at major choke points of the story to really commemorate certain things. And players do that for other players as well.
The community is really good about that, I will say. We're really welcoming. And a lot of it is the whole, we love to give away like these little things that represent your character, that represent you, so that you know that we understand who you are at the table.
Oh yeah, because really, and it's you got to always be aware, because obviously using Etsy too, you know, it's handcrafted stuff. So just like D&D and just like the stuff we make, there's going to be mistakes sometimes, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a mistake on you or the character. And like I always tell you, like the stories of the mistakes are always better than a perfect item.
Absolutely. And they don't have to be expensive. They don't have, like you said, they don't have to be perfect. We had a player who had a white owl bear as a pet, and someone got him a keychain of a little keychain plushie owl bear. It was so cute, and he keeps his little dice in there.
So really, I guess the end of note is just don't force it. Yeah. Don't force it. It comes naturally, and each time you get that new piece, it's just like filling in another piece of furniture in your home.
Right. Let it come to you. You'll know it when you see it. It'll just resonate like that. And you'll be like, I have to have that.
But as always with D&D, make sure to budget.
Yep.
This can go out of hand real quick if you're not focused on a budget. And that probably should be the number one of the whole thing.
That's the number one tip because it can get expensive if you're not careful.
Oh, yeah.
But that's a wrap for today's episode of You Heard It From Us. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the gear players bring to the table. Whether you're a fan of old school pen and paper or love customizing your gaming tools, we hope you found something useful here.
And remember, it's not about how much gear you have. It's about finding what works best for you and enhances your experience at the table. If you're inspired to start building your own collection, take your time, have fun with it, and just make it your own.
Yep. Don't forget to follow us on social media, leave a review, and join our Discord to keep the conversation going. We love hearing from you, and seeing what your gear you use in your own games would be awesome.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Remember, keep those dice rolling, and until then, may your adventures be ever epic.
Thanks for tuning in to You Heard It From Us.
We hope you enjoyed the adventure and picked up a few tips for your own gaming table. But the journey doesn't end here.
We'd love to hear from you. Join our Couple of Nerds Discord community where you can share your thoughts, ask questions, and suggest topics for future episodes. Whether you're a seasoned player or just starting out, there's a spot for everyone at our table.
To keep up with all our latest adventures and episodes, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep the magic alive and connects us with even more amazing listeners like you.
And remember, you can find us on all major podcast platforms. Just search for You Heard It From Us and hit that subscribe button.
We can't wait to see you on Discord and hear your stories. Together, we can make the world of tabletop gaming even more magical.
Until next time, keep rolling those dice.
And may your adventures be legendary.